Hello and welcome to Bite-Sized Book History. I'm your host, Allie Alvis, also known as Book Historia. I'm a book historian and rare book cataloger at antiquarian book dealer Type Punch Matrix. Monkeys playing bagpipes, butt trumpets, and the ever-popular knights fighting snails are some of the grotesques you might run into in the margins of illuminated manuscripts. A manuscript is any document written by hand. Before the Western development of movable type printing, manuscripts were the only way to disseminate information, aside from just telling it to someone. Manuscripts from a variety of genres survive all over the world in private collections and in special collections libraries. If you haven't watched my last video on illuminated manuscripts, here's a quick run-through on the parts of the page and the order in which they were finished. First came the text written by a scribe. In the early Middle Ages, the scribe and the illuminator were often the same person. But by the late Middle Ages, the two vocations had largely been divided. The scribe left blank spaces in the text for the addition of ornamented initials and miniatures. Next came the rubrication. From the Latin rubricare, to color red, this task could be done by the scribe or by a trained rubricator. Rubrication was used to set off smaller divisions within the text, such as paragraphs. The illuminator would be the last person to work on the page. They would fill in miniatures or large initials in the blank spaces left by the scribe. Generally, particularly in the case of religious manuscripts, the illuminator would be working off an established model for how an illustration should look, or even instructions left by the scribe. But there's a lot of blank space around the text, not just in the predetermined locations for later embellishment. Border decorations originally took the form of vine-like growths off of larger illuminated initials. But as the Middle Ages progressed, they became more and more complex. The margins of manuscripts were not governed by the same strict rules as the miniatures in the text. In fact, out here, there weren't many rules at all. The border was the place for illuminators to let their hair down and have a bit of fun. Margins are a very liminal space, literally on the edge of the holy text and illumination, but not quite into the real world of the reader. Illuminators used this space to offer a sort of artistic commentary on the absurdities of everyday life, or to poke fun at the text, and especially to entertain. The kooky inhabitants of medieval margins are called grotesques or drolleries. Drollerie comes from the French word drôle for fun, and I feel like it really captures the spirit of some of these little guys. Pretty much anyone or anything can pop up in the margins of an illuminated manuscript. But these were not just random menageries of chaos. Many of the figures were imbued with meaning that might be lost on viewers of today. These meanings could be anything from puns to references to popular jokes and songs to moral symbolism. To medieval people, animals in particular carried a great deal of meaning. I mentioned the unique depictions of animals in bestiaries in my last video about illuminated manuscripts. These illuminations don't look this way because medieval artists were bad at drawing, but often because communicating the meaning of an animal was more important than depicting it realistically. Western Christian thought at the time held that every element of nature in the world was a manifestation of God, and therefore animals, plants, and even rocks were symbolic of certain morals that humans should or should not emulate. For example, lions, thought to be quick to forgive and not easily angered, could be likened to Jesus. But a reader would not want to emulate the cricket, who was supposed to prioritize singing over his own health. Monkeys are a common inhabitant of medieval margins, literally aping the actions of humans. They can represent thoughtless, sinful people, but they are also often quite comedic. Even fantastic animals like unicorns, dragons, mermaids, and griffins were full of moral significance. If you're interested in learning more about medieval animal symbolism, check out bestiary.ca in my Read More section below. Of course, there are still many mysteries in the margins. For example, that classic knight fighting a snail motif? There's actually no one agreed upon meaning for it. The British Library notes that these battles may represent, quote, struggles of the poor against an oppressive aristocracy, a straightforward statement of the snail's troublesome reputation as a garden pest, a commentary on social climbers, or even a saucy symbol of female sexuality. Historian Lillian Randall speculates that these snails represented the Lombards, a Germanic people with a treasonous reputation who invaded Italy in the 8th century. There is also a very real possibility that some of these instances of snail fights were played as a parody of the supposed toughness of knights, or simply as a humorous wouldn't it be wild if scenario. The most likely answer is all of the above, as different people could read different meanings from these marginal vignettes. The entertainment factor of medieval margins shouldn't be discounted. Some scholars speculate that these silly scenes served as navigational aids. As most manuscripts did not have page numbers, it could be difficult to remember the location of a particular passage. But if you could remember that there was an antlered bird man on the page in question, your life might be a bit easier. So, when you chuckle at the odd inhabitants of medieval margins, you're joining centuries of tradition. That does it for this episode of Bite-Sized Book History. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to click those manicules on the like and subscribe buttons below. And feel free to drop a comment if you want to tell me about your favorite medieval monster, or have a suggestion for topics I can discuss in later episodes. I'll see you next time, and remember, don't bite your books.